with Donald Trump's announcement that USAID is going to be shut down, and everyone else followed suit. European donors started decreasing donor money more than ever before. So we are in an exceptional period of time. I'm a non-profit practitioner. I've been mostly working in governance and mostly with civil society. So I'm very passionate about civil society development in general. So before we start, this is an open discussion, but I thought for us to get started, it's important I give you something to look at and something that triggers your emotions, something that triggers some thinking, or also triggers giving or talking about your own experiences instead of just talking. For me, it works better if I see something, and I'm assuming maybe also works for you. But before we dive in, I would like to quickly want to know where you are based. Maybe you can type in the chat. Africa, Asia, Australia, Oceania, Europe, North America, South America. So I can't see it. Vishwa, can you tell me?
So North America, I'm going in the reverse direction and reading all. North America, Asia, Middle East, Asia, Europe, Kristen from Germany, Europe, South America, Netherlands. So about 5 people from Asia and 5 people from 4 people, and then from Middle East, North America, Europe. 5 people from, and then a few people scattered from the other continents.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. The next question is, have you personally been involved in mobilizing resources for social causes? Have you been involved to some extent, not involved at all, or have you been fully involved, or are you still involved? So there are 3 answers. Vishwa, you let me know again. I don't know why I don't see the chat. Because, here it is. Sorry, I can see it now. I've rescued myself.
You can? Do you want me to read it, Barbara?
I can see it now.
Perfect.
So I can see fully involved. Andre was fully involved. Green Life Canary fully involved. Ivy, yes, to some extent. Half there, to some extent. Yes, some extent. Okay, so it looks like those who have answered that most of you have been involved. Then, next one. The next question is, it doesn't work. So I need to, my stop share. Sorry, why now I can't, my screen share stop share. 1 second. Stopped working. Let me share again. Still not, sorry, it doesn't work. Share again. Do you see this now?
Yes, Barbara. We can see it.
Yes.
You can still go into full screen mode.
Okay. So how do you feel about fundraising? And what are your perceptions about fundraising or mobilizing resources? I prefer the term mobilizing resources because fundraising is so narrowly focusing on money only. So mobilizing resources is my preferred term. Do you have positive experience? Are you neutral? Did you find it, or do you find it challenging, or do you have a very negative, or you have a critical perception of fundraising? Yeah. Critical, negative. Oh, wow. Challenging, very challenging, critical, negative, very challenging. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Thank you very much for the feedback. So now, God, it doesn't work again. I need to go out. Sorry. There's something wrong with I can't.
It's just that you went to the chat. That's the pattern that got repeated.
That's why.
The chat. Yeah.
I try again. Let me do that. So I'm not using the chat anymore. That's the problem. Share. Okay.
We can read the answers for you, Barbara. And
yeah, I've seen everything. So, okay. So now, as I said, before we talk about, have this open discussion about fundraising, I thought I give you some facts that might be interesting. Some of you might come from the fundraising space and maybe you already know. But some of the facts, I've been in the fundraising space for 17 years. I personally find it very challenging. It's partly rewarding, but I also have evolved my perception about fundraising quite a bit over the last couple of years. So according to I give you some facts. According to the Global Humanitarian Assistance Report, only 4.5% of overall funding available was directed or dedicated to local organizations, mostly in the Global South, which is very little. A couple of years ago, it was 0.3%. I think this was 2019. So we have there's more money going to the Global South, but it's still very, very small. The reasons for it, why this is the case, I mean, it's a very complex discussion. I'm not going to go into that. Again, it doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work. Sorry, I need to just share from, sorry, I don't know why I can't share. Let me try again. Okay, from current, slide slow. Okay. Also, according to a study done in 2024 by the Global Fund for Community Foundation on the topics of unpaid aid, they have established that 93% of all official development aid of donor assistance country went to Global North organizations or organizations that are originated in the Global North or in the richer hemisphere of our planet, and only 7% of the money has gone to CSOs in partner countries or Global South. Is that most organizations, non-profit organizations, civil society organizations suffer from something called like the starvation cycle, because one of the reasons is that most funders provide inadequate coverage for overhead costs. As you know, overhead cost is always considered something not useful. Sometimes they go as far as saying even salaries can't be paid, which is ridiculous. So this study done by Humantum in 2023, I think, yes, Humantum, maybe you know the organization that supports global civil society organization on financial management, anything that has got to do with building capacity of non-profit organizations. So, and the inadequate covering of overhead costs and limited access to unrestricted funding is make it very, very difficult for many NGOs everywhere, including in the Global North, to achieve something called financial health or obtain or be financially sustainable. It's almost impossible because you are not able to build up a cushion of financial resources or to build up a reserve fund or start building an endowment fund. It's not possible. So I would like to talk about the current reality that I've been facing since I'm in Zambia. I've managed a grant maker here for 16 years. And what in a study done over 4 years, we have realized there's high donor dependence. And I think this is a picture that you can see in many, many other countries, and it's not unique to Zambia. Grant proposal writing remains the most important fundraising methodology. And in Zambia, the primary source, revenue source continues to be grants. It's become kind of the business model. Then the second one is second most important is self-generated income. The third one is volunteers. The fourth one is in-kind giving and donations. But of course, grants make up, I think, 93%. 20% of CSOs rely on local resources as a substantial share. And CSOs, if they receive funding, 50% of the of the donations they receive from within Zambia, not from outside Zambia. And after COVID, things changed quite dramatically. But what civil society organizations learned during COVID is that resilience is they consider a resilient organization as an organization that has the ability to raise local resources and has access to mechanisms, or has the ability to raise local resources within its borders. And others said 55 of those surveyed said that access to reserve funds, to a financial cushion during extraordinary times like COVID and other disasters is absolutely important to build resilience. So I know fundraising, I think fundraising jobs, there's many fundraisers out there. Many fundraisers are burned out. Many fundraisers leave their job after 1 year. I've read articles about it, or how fundraisers feel about their future, about the current job. So there's a lot of exhaustion in the sector, I think. But what does the practice look like in reality? So fundraising is mostly left to the executive director and some. It's part of the founders if it's a startup. But once it's no longer a startup, the founders lean back and they leave it to the executive director. The boards that we all need to have often do not understand or appreciate fundraising. And unfortunately, fundraising is often treated as the unnecessary evil, because we are not unable to invest in it, but it has to be done, because if no one does it, money is not going to flow. The majority of fundraisers are not trained fundraisers. I have been in fundraising. I spent 70% for 16 years, even now 17 years on fundraising. I've never been trained on fundraising, but you just get to do it because otherwise you're not surviving. So it's quite a paradox. And professional fundraising training is often not available, particularly for small organizations. There's a very, very low success rate. I once read a study on the success rate when you apply for calls for proposals. The global average success rate is 5%. There's also very, very high turnover amongst fundraisers. Why is that? Because you never get to do the work in the field. You always get to do the fundraising and the paperwork and the tedious work of getting resources into organizations, but often you do not really get to participate in the real success stories that happen in the field. And also the last one I want to mention, everyone is excited about artificial intelligence, but I must say artificial intelligence doesn't do the trick for you if you don't have the fundamental data in place. So AI can't just invent your organization, or cannot just imagine your track record, and because you need to have data, and the data are produced by your organization. So now the success rate, this is my own example. I had to start actively fundraise between 2018 and 2024. Before that, we were lucky because we were given like €4 million a year just to spend, because we were like really lucky. But then realities changed, and I had to start fundraise frantically, because we're going downhill financially, not in terms of assets. So out of the 87 attempts, 49 were successful. Roughly 31 were unsuccessful. Roughly 10% were, at that time when I left, were awaiting feedback from whoever, from a funder or service, a contract, or someone asking for a service. 2 or 5 of them were cancelled, and 5% on 5% of the attempts, we did not receive any feedback. We were just ignored. But what this says is the conclusion of this: most of the grants we received because of the relationship we had to the funders, and because we were trusted as a local organization that had a certain a niche, capacity. The open competitive calls had a very poor return of almost zero. So this is the picture from my own experience over 6 years of fundraising, resource mobilization. But then I think this is always the big problem when you talk about this very sensitive topic with local NGOs. Should we actually consider ourselves as victims of a system that doesn't work for us? Obviously, the dominant system does not accommodate local organizations. Should we accept to be victims of the starvation cycle? Or are we really unable to help ourselves? And are there no other options available? I don't think so. But I think this needs for us to reimagine the concept of resource mobilization. So I'm now no longer talking about fundraising. I'm talking about resource mobilization, which is for me slightly different and has a more positive connotation. So we can, as I said, no, we should not become victims of the starvation cycle because we have no limit, we have no control or limit control of what the funding landscape look like, whether our economy performs well, whether we have restrictive government regulations, or whether there is no local philanthropy culture in the country, whether taxes don't work for us or against us, or whether there's a lot of competition amongst CSOs, or whether we have access to skilled labor. This is really not in our control. But what is in our control are the internal factors. So now I'm talking about two things. What can be done at organization level? A lot can be done. I think fundraising or resource mobilization should be a part of the foundational infrastructure. The board members need to be immersing into fundraising, need to be immersed or fully involved. And they also need to, and the board members should be part of a group that have actually influence in society or within the community you're working with. There's a need to build an organization-wide resource mobilization plan. Everyone needs to be involved, and not only the executive director. We need to have impact stories and stories available. We need to be findable and fundable. We need to have M&E data or success stories available at any time. We need financial reports and accurate financial reports. And last but not least, you see this red, there's leadership integrity. If leadership integrity is not there, there's no way you're going to be able to build trusted relationship with donors. Because even if your audited financial statement does not give you a full picture of what the organization gives, a picture of your assets, a balance sheet, but it does not give you a full picture of what the management team is all about, what kind of values they are working with, and how they manage the team and how they work with communities. So now I'm talking about what actually the core of this discussion is. I think there's much more that we as organization, that we as a non-profit organization, we can offer. First of all of us have social capital. Based on the positive connections we have created over the years. So I don't need to talk about give that definition of social capital. I'm sure I can't share again. Sorry. Whenever I click on something, I can't share. Sorry, I need to go back. Stop sharing.
So some people have recycled. We have about 19 people standing in the room right now.
Okay.
But about 3 or 4 people left and 3 or 4 new people joined in.
Okay. Then we have, of course, can I continue? Yeah. Then we have the issue of moral capital. It's something that it's also an intangible asset of trust, reputation, goodwill. And this comes from the organization's consistent good behavior and how they're being perceived in the public domain. And it's all about having integrity, social responsibility, honesty, transparency, being accountable, and so on and so forth. So this is also very important. Again, it doesn't work. I don't know what's happening here. Okay, I do it this way. Then we have intellectual capital. The sum of everything that the organization kind of, in terms of intellectual power, the organization is accommodating in terms of human capital, structural capital, and relational capital. And then we have the the reputational capital. These are also intangible assets. Reputational risk is always something that the board is NGO boards are very much concerned with. And this basically is about how are you perceived in the public, and what are you perceived as? Are you perceived as a trustworthy organization? Are you perceived as a leader that sits on is in the proximity of the community, or are perceived as an elitist NGO? All of this kind of has an influence on how the public perceives you. The next one is this one. Then we have, of course, financial capital. Financial capital, it's obvious, but we are not only talking about the finances we have at hand to keep going, to finance our operations. We are talking about financial reserves or any assets we have that can actually help us achieve our mission. So this is all about reserve funds. It's about land we might have. It's about assets or offices we might have, and so on, physical assets, and so on and so forth. Also, if we have money, if we have huge amounts of money, are we putting this in an endowment fund? Is the endowment fund working are we using the endowment fund to actually achieve our mission? So basically, the bottom line is the following. This is not my creation here. This is taken from the Presencing Institute, for those ones who are aware of Theory U. What we are working here is about what is important is to consider. We need to consider particular social capital. Social capital is the relationships we build over the years, the relationships that can work for us, and they can actually create connections. They can help us create new connections and can reach out to new connections. And then also the social capital also then nurtures the reputational capital. It nurtures the moral capital, and it helps also with intellectual capital. So all of these are interrelated. Of course, the financial capital is slightly different, but all of these issues need to be, all of these capitals, the social, the reputational, the SMIRF, the moral, the intellectual, the reputation, and the financial capital should be taken into account to build a plan that can actually make your organization sustainable. So I want to give you an example before we start discussing. So I'm currently involved in some collaborative work with local volunteers here in Zambia and a small NGO, and we've realized that we have been worried about Zambia's bad track record of bushfires and indiscriminate burning of anything that there is, waste, farm waste, bush, the forest, slash and burn. 30% of Zambia's entire land mass burns every year, not at the same time, but over a year. So you can imagine, if you look at this photograph, that's Zambia. Zambia is a very big country and has huge repercussion for the soil, for the air, and wildlife biodiversity. So we started to, as individuals, we said, okay, we don't have resources, but we are deeply concerned about what's happening. And Zambia let us do something together. We started with 0 resources, okay? This is the poster, by the way, that was created as the first output. So now this is what it looks like. Do you all see this? So this is something I wanted to bring to attention, and this is maybe what I would like to discuss with you. So we got together. You see the inner circle here. We got together. The initiator is a famous photographer who is based in Zambia. He's done all the books on wildlife in Zambia. His name is Ian Murphy. We got together, one organic farmer, another organic, the third organic farmer, and that's me, the NGO non-profit practitioner, the owner of a shop selling organic produce, an environmental educator, and a small NGO that I'm also a co-founder of, which is very small. We have a $15,000 budget a year, so it's very small. So we got together to discuss, so what are we going to do about this? We might not have money, but we have all of these other resources, intangible resources that might not be visible. And we started discussing on how we're moving forward. So if you see, and this is hand-drawn chart here. So if you see the most important asset we had is the interest in the subject. We are all very much concerned on burning on the indiscriminate bushfires and burning of anything that is not considered useful. So this brought us together, the interest in the subject. Then we had intellectual capital, because some of them, Ian, the photographer, of course, he also owns a publishing house. He had a little firm, and he has the printing and publishing knowledge. I have the fundraising knowledge. Some of us have the sustainable waste management knowledge. Then the photographer also has access to rich people. He had access to a famous graphic designer at MIT Boston, who left Zimbabwe years ago because he had to flee Mugabe, Charles Maviane Davis, who produced this poster. Then the same, he had access to CEOs in the corporate in the corporate sector here and in the UK. Then we had one of them, the organic farmer, is a former employee of a big marketing company. So she has marketing and communication capacity. I have convening capacity because I still have access to all the many NGOs we have worked with during my 16 years tenure as a grant maker. Then we, as the small NGO that I've co-founded, has the distribution capacity, accounting capacity. We have contacts of NGOs across the country. We have the distribution capacity. So our social capital, you see two pluses here. The intellectual capital, we had two pluses here. We are maybe not doing so well on financial capital, even though Ian, the photographer, has pre-financed 2,000 photo posters. So the financial capital is partly there, but that's what we have been focusing on to mobilize resources. Then we have the moral capital. We can't say, I can't make a judgment because we are still struggling, but we are still trying our best for people to know about this initiative. And the same, I can't say much about the reputational capital. But I think if we were getting more resources on board and would be able to solidify this initiative and spread on promote this campaign through different activities, community radio station campaigns, going out to schools and so on. I think we would potentially have the financial capital at some point, the moral capital and the reputational capital, because the intellectual and social capital is already in place. So this is the basically what I wanted to get started with. And the question for discussion for the remaining half an hour is, maybe we could, if people are interested, maybe we could do a collective harvest of, as I see most of you have been involved in fundraising in one way or another, what are the biggest non-financial resources of your organization or the community you work with, and what forms of wealth do already exist in your community that are undervalued or should be valued differently or should look at differently? Yeah, so I'm opening the floor if there's any questions to what I said earlier, any reflections, maybe any questions, reflections, and then maybe we can do a collective harvest if people are interested. The floor is open.
Has his hand up?
Yes, Juan, go ahead.
Thank you. I was not sure if we can make the question here or is it written, but thank you enough. I'm living in Colombia, and we have a very different situation that was the one that we had years before President Trump, and with his new decisions of closing a lot of NGOs and services from the state, the relationship between the money and the funding that was before has changed the complete scenario. So it has collapsed a lot of NGOs and third sector because it was the main source of income. And that is a risk that we have to incorporate now in all the funding plans. How do I project those kind of risks? Because that kind of relationships will be shifting continually depending on the type of government that we have.
Is this a question, or is this a question to me,
yes,
or is this a comment?
That's the question. How can I insert that kind of risk within the model of financing?
I think it depends on what kind of NGO you are. I think, are you mostly dependent on foreign funding, or have you already integrated local resource mobilization into your model?
It's basically global and international funding.
Okay, but would your organization be ready to move to integrate local resource mobilization into your model or not?
Not likely.
It's not likely.
Because of the money exchange. Because my currency is a very weak currency, and the foreign currency is much stronger in Europe and in dollars. So the amount of gain is a lot when we receive that kind of support.
Yeah. Well, we have the same situation here. We have just lost 30% of what we had because of currency fluctuations, and have gone through this situation various times. But I think if you are, I mean, I don't know so your situation in detail, but the way I read it, or how I would see that is, if you want to continue to be dependent on external sources, and I think that's what I've done. I have moved away from bilateral and multilateral sources of funding, because they are the most politically, they are dependent on the goodwill of the donor governments, on the domestic politics in their countries. And I think philanthropic funding is more flexible. My experience is, once you have a philanthropic donor on board, they are more likely to stay with you for many years, and they're more likely to engage with you at a different level, as opposed to bilaterals. Like, I can talk about the EU is extremely difficult. I mean, I think USAID was probably even more difficult in terms of managing those funds, but the EU is very bureaucratic, very square in everything they do. There's nothing you can change. Either you comply or don't comply. There's no way to negotiate anything. But with the philanthropic donors, I think my experience are some extremely flexible. They are accommodating you, and they are more interested in what you as a leader, or as what you represent, rather than whether you fit in their box. So that's my experience, and I have been very, very happy. I have been lucky. We have been lucky because we were introduced from one philanthropic donor to another one to another one. So it was a chain reaction, and the warm introductions were extremely helpful to be known in the philanthropic sector. I'm not saying that I'm a total fan of the philanthropic sector, because it also has its own challenges, because philanthropy as a concept is problematic. I would rather concur with the opinion that the rich people need to be taxed properly, so we wouldn't need philanthropists. But anyway, now this is what we have. Philanthropy is in place. So this is what I would say: to diversify the risk and move away from the bilaterals, because if you continue waiting for OECD DAC countries, the Canadians, the Australians, and the Germans and the French, it's going to get worse. I think we haven't seen the worst. So that's why I would move away from them. And I think this has rescued us. But we have also inbuilt other ways of, we have inbuilt service contracts, we have inbuilt local resource mobilization for specific activities. I mean, but this has worked well for our mandate and for our mission. I'm not sure what you're working on, but this is how it worked for us. I'm not sure whether this answer was any helpful. Okay, there was a second hand, I think.
Yeah, I think it's me. Thank you, Barbara. I also wanted to notice that Nicole shared something on the chat. I don't know if you want to read it out loud, Nicole, or maybe you want us to read it, because it will be nice to bring it to the table. I hadn't read it yet. But okay,
sure.
With what? Go ahead, please.
Sure, yeah, I can come off mute. I'm just not on video right now. So a couple of years ago, I had the experience of having access to a substantial amount of philanthropic capital to create an educational program. And when that online educational program came to a natural close, we reserved some of the funds at the end to be able to keep the resources online for at least 5 years and to share them widely. So right now, if you go to ecogather.ing, you can access all of the courses that we had built in that project, which I'm no longer running, no longer affiliated with, but was built through Sterling College, which unfortunately will close at the end of the year. And so I think it's it's also an experience of an example of thinking about it when you are wrapping up something. There's so much philanthropic capital that goes into short-lived efforts that are good and that we learn a lot from and do good in the world, but then where do those resources go? What happens to them? One thing I have learned, though, is that we were not able to sort of save funds to support the marketing of that archive. So, it's one thing for it to exist and to be freely available to anyone. It's another thing for folks to know that it's there and to use it. So it's not, a sort of a be-all, end-all solution, but I think figuring out how we can take more of what we are able to create when we do have those resources and share it and leverage it in ways that have very few restrictions. Like, you can do whatever you like with those courses. And we're not sort of attempting to control that. We're just trying to make sure that it gets utilized and has wider reach than it otherwise would have. In a parallel effort right now in my new organization, we are trying to more figure out how to create and maintain a learning commons through a gift economy. And are thinking a lot about what it means and how the community can decide amongst ourselves to figure out how we're going to co-maintain that. And so we have a lot of those resources, but haven't mobilized them just yet because we're trying to figure out how to manage that in a collective way.
Okay. Well, this was rather a comment, but can I just give you my own thinking about your comment? You said while we have resources, we should do everything possible in our means to maintain what we've built. So I think I totally agree, and I think that's something that has been a problem with many donors, and I know very few organizations that have actually managed to build assets during when they had money, like building assets in terms of investing in land or investing in an office building or investing in other physical assets that can be used as collaterals when you need money. Because you might want to use that money to get a loan if if loans are available in your country, and I think this is in our case but I also want to say often this is not something donors would agree. Particularly bilateral donors are extremely hesitant. They don't like this idea of handing over assets or helping you to have assets. I think the philanthropic sector is more lenient and more accepting and more flexible. But in our case, I just give you an example. I think again we were very lucky. We had so much money in the beginning, we had 4 million euro a year, and because we were starting up something, and in the 4 million euro in the beginning, it will take time for you to be able to give grants out to local civil society organizations. Because of this period, we have accumulated a lot of money. At some point, we had 5 million euros sitting in our bank account. And then one of our board members say, why don't we make this money work for us instead of letting the bank taking our money and let it work for them? So then we negotiated a 25% interest rate, which was huge at that point. It is no longer possible, 25% interest rate. So with that 25% of interest rate over a short period, a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years, or 2 years, we were able to negotiate with the donors, telling them, listen, with this money, we have earned this amount of interest in money. Do you allow us to invest into an office building? And they said, unfortunately, and they all said yes. So since then, we have an asset. And even if money is no longer available tomorrow, if all donors said bye-bye, we don't want to work with you anymore, we could still go back to the office. We could still be a team. Of course, you can now also, this was a long time ago, we can also work online at home, but we have an asset and we could basically get rid of the asset, monetize it and use the money to start all over again, start afresh. So that's why I'm thinking civil society needs to start thinking differently about assets. Assets not only for the purpose of accumulating wealth, but assets for the purpose of creating wealth for the community, which is a different concept. I have known a couple. There's Waxi in Ghana, there's Start in Ghana, there's KCTF in Kenya. All of them have assets that they use. Whatever the assets generate in terms of additional funding, they reinvest in their programs. I think it's a beautiful concept. If the private sector is able to do this, the non-profit sector should also be able to do that. And I think we should not be accepting that donors immediately just, no, this is not for us. I think we need to build an argument that assets for global civil society is absolutely important, because what we are is continuously, steadily under-resourced, burned out, exhausted, working on the weekends, working at night. The corporate sector might also be exhausted, but they are going to be paid properly. Unlike in the non-profit sector, we don't have all of these luxuries. And that's why I'm a big advocate of civil society advocating for having access to assets, or being able to given the liberty of freedom to build the assets, and not looked at it as, no, why do you need, you just take care of your community, you don't need assets. As long as the assets are being used to reinvest in your community or in your social cause, I think it's the perfect formula for me. And I would do it again. I would always advocate for the same. Yeah. And I don't know, the second question was about community, Nicole, no? Nicole, yeah. Was about community resource mobilization, isn't it? Yeah. Are you still there?
Yes. And how we can sort of tend those resources in a way collectively, particularly in a distributed organization, not all in one place. But I think the same question holds if you're operating locally as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think for this to, the biggest obstacle, I think, is ourselves, because many of us here, I can speak of Zambia, where I think we're no best. We have been not spoiled. We have been rather comfortable for like 20, 30 years. It was expected for us we were always on the receiving end, and we did not challenge ourselves sufficiently to promote community philanthropy within our country, within Zambia or within the global south. We did not promote, we always kind of put it aside as something, this has no significance. But I think community philanthropy has a significance, and I think that we should also, maybe in the US, I think you're based in here, maybe this is a very different story, but at least here where I am sitting, this is something that is not being taken seriously, even though in Africa, people always say Ubuntu is very, very important. I am because of you, or you are because of me. But I think it has been eroding because of how society has changed. And I think because of the NGO sector be entirely foreign funded, the local community philanthropy aspect has completely has been not nurtured. And I think there's something that we have been trying to put again on the main agenda, because if people see themselves as actors and co-investors, be it in terms of time or physical contributions or small monies, once people realize that they're actually contributing to something, they also become co-investors, and they could become automatically more interested in the cause, rather than, this is the NGO's business, not that they have brought this to us, it doesn't concern me. But if they're part and parcel of an endeavor, I think the relationship to you and the relationship to the cause changes completely. And I think that's what we have seen. But I think it's still early days. I think in other places, this is probably more advanced than in Zambia. But this is definitely a very, very big debate here in the African philanthropy community. We need to reconsider our roots, our own resources, how we can contribute to the social causes and not constantly relying on government or external donors that will resolve our problems. They won't resolve our problems. They will resolve it in a way that they see fit, that they prefer, but we would like to resolve it the way we want to resolve it and we would of course always need, because the challenges are huge, we need matching funding, but we should need to be in the driving seat to determine what the solution should be, and our contributions need to be seen as valuable contributions too. So there's already initiatives I know of that they start. They are indicating that they're monetizing the contributions of local communities, and to have a conversation with a donor. See, but you are always bragging, you're always focusing on how many millions you contribute. But have you ever considered the millions of hours contributed by local people and local community? If we were to monetize or put a figure to every hour, probably we would have a different we would have a different conversation. And maybe you should start seeing us as equal partners in this conversation, rather than looking down upon us because we can only bring the 5 pence and the €5, and that they don't that are not considered as valuable. I think there's a power relationship to be managed. There's a power relation. There is a pushback that we should push back, and we should be much stronger advocates for local contributions to be valued, to be appreciated by anyone who comes on board to co-finance or to finance a local endeavor anywhere. Anyway, I've gone into a completely different discussion, a shift in power, but I think for me this is very, very important. Nicole, I'm not sure I have answered your question. I've gone overboard here.
You have taken us into a very important conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. So if there's no longer, is there any other comment?
I have. I'm going to pick up on something that I think has been said, and I think that the best way I have in my mind now is with an example that we all know somehow, because how we build up this conference, for example, that we are in now, this rec, is beautiful, isn't it? And answering your first question, what's the biggest non-financial resource your organization already has? And Ecoversities is a very, very relational community. I think that's our biggest and most beautiful resource. And we are so very proud and happy, and it actually brings us happiness. And sometimes it brings a coffee or something to eat in our house. So I want to talk about this balance, because this conference is supported by many people around the world, many global South people around the world, not only, but many, maybe the majority. For sure, the core group are almost everyone is from the global South. And so what happens when we are so happy because all this relationality and the capacity and the ability to create things like, for example, this conference or anything Ecoversities do, or whatever or another NGO or organization such as Ecoversities. And we're so happy because of that. But Monday after this conference ends, we need to work for our mining company, our local mining company, because I need to pay the rent, or I need to pay the scholarship of my kids or whatever. So why I'm bringing this up is because we in the global South are the sons or the grandsons of extractivism, and that is very crucial. This historical surrounding basis that we are living in, because how usually works is we win a funding, and there is our left face is very happy because we won the funding. Wow, we finally got it. We can do the project. and the right half of our face is actually worried and sad because it's so much work to do.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I didn't want to win this because so much work and what am I going to do? Where am I going to pay the rent from? So that with this we have learned that, and we are some of us are part of this organization that's called FUNECO, that sees fundraising more the need of more than receiving funds and spending them in a year cycle, and then growing a new need for earning new funds and so on, this starvation cycle. To see the metaphor of an old mature forest, an old mature forest, because of its complexity and diversity, it gets to catch the rain, to create the rain as a metaphor for a resource. It doesn't need to, of course, it has relationship with the forest of around the world, but it is an entity as itself that creates and its own resources. So how can we become a little more of a grown old forest? And it's very hard because all we have, or almost all we have, is relationality, and that's beautiful, but beautiful doesn't pay the rent. And I'll stop there. I think I made my point. Is more of a provoking sharing, but I would love to hear from you.
Well, yes, I agree. I mean, I've been in the same. I'm currently in various collaboratives, and it can be very exhausting, and it doesn't pay the rent. It pays your coffee or your dinner once in a while, but it doesn't pay your rent. So I totally agree, and it can be exhausting. So I think, but I still believe the danger is if you expect people to be there in this collaborative for long periods of time, that it has people will come and go, and it is draining for new people to come. It is draining. So I think some sort of assets, if the initiative of the collaborative wants to stay together over a longer period of time, something needs to back it up. And I still believe some sorts of assets need to be built. Volunteerism has its limit, I believe, because all of us, unless if we were rich people, maybe we would be in a different space. I don't think we are rich people, and we all need to make a living. So I think I believe relying on volunteers and volunteerism for all the time is dangerous. And I think there needs to be a backbone on however you build that. I see many collaborative at the end of the day always decide, so what do we do to resource our collaborative? How do we hold ourselves together? And there's all sorts of thinking around it. I always found it very exciting. I don't have the answer to it, but I think there's definitely one of a very big challenge. It is even the small collaborative that I've given you as an example, the Don't Burn campaign in Zambia. I mean, it's like the same. There's some people that are always very active and others are less active. And it's a lot of energy for the few people holding it together to keep it going. And it's all often a matter of time when things collapse like that. So, however, and that's why I say it's important to make people aware that we need to build on something to keep us together longer term, because it's not a short term endeavor. It's going to be in the next couple of years if we want to succeed. Yeah. Okay. Is there any other question?
I have a question.
Sorry.
Sorry, Vaishwa. Okay. I'm also just going to read this question that is in the chat, which is Alex asking if you can give examples of assets which can be built by different local organizations. And then I wanted to go back to something that was earlier on in your slides that was about, wow, I read Alex's question and forgot mine. Yeah, I read Alex's question and forgot mine, so maybe you can answer that first and then I will remember.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
What kind of local assets can be built? I think there's, I don't know, it depends. Every community is different. We just here in Zambia, we experimented with building a community endowment fund. We failed because I think we started it wrongly. But basically, community endowment fund is you work with a community. Let's say you work with a community of professionals, or you work with a place-based community. Say, listen, government is not taking care of this. Let's build an endowment fund and put aside 5 pence or 5 cents every citizen in this circle puts a little contribution over a period of time. Maybe we can kind of find a matching funder who puts in the majority of the bulk of the money, and all the others keep on contributing. And if the money builds up, this can be invested in. It can be invested, and it can earn interest. So that's the concept we started working with. I know KCDF in Kenya. Yeah, you in Kenya, and you? Correct, Wangui. You in Kenya, correct?
Yes.
Okay, KCDF has been working on an endowment fund. You know them, I'm sure, in Nairobi. Yeah? And community endowment funds. There's also the issue of saving groups in for example, saving groups in local communities. If saving groups they save together, but they put aside something like a social fund. A social fund where the social fund, depending, you can define what a social fund means, and the social fund can then help with emergencies, can help with a joint community project, and so on and so forth. So I think this concept of joint saving and building a fund can be replicated in any community, a community of professionals, a local community in a peri-urban, impoverished area, city in Africa, Nairobi, Lusaka. It can be, I don't know, a community of alumni that want to support their old school. It can be the women professionals who want to build a women's fund. I think it can work at every level. So this is maybe one example, 2 examples. Community endowment funds. We have failed. We haven't studied it properly. Another example maybe is something that NGOs have started doing here. Maybe this is what also happens in other countries. NGOs employees put their money into a joint account. This is managed by one NGO, and the entity that holds the savings of the NGO earns the interest from the investments. The NGO employee can get money from the fund at a very low interest, a low rate, much lower than commercial banks. But the entity who holds the money can work with the money and can invest the money in their social cause. So that's maybe another example. But I think there's probably many more examples. If you look into the community wealth building, there's a couple of organizations who work on that, and I find it very exciting what they do, because basically by thinking differently, we make ourselves independent of international donors who should not be the ones who say how we should operate here. So I think we need to be much more creative, much more thoughtful, much more creative in building those local mechanisms to make us independent and more. Yeah, we need to be more proactive, more assertive, and more creative. That's what I think. Okay.
So we are on the clock about.
Yes.
The next call is going to start in another half an hour. Okay. So we do have some time if there's some pressing questions coming here.
Yes, I have a couple of minutes. Yes, no problem. Is there any pressing question anyone wants to? Is there any?
I did remember my question. My question was about going back to what you're talking about, the lack of training on resource mobilization for most people, and just if you've come up with any ways to meet this challenge within the spaces that you move in.
Well, I've done what I have done in the past, and I continue offering this is financial sustainability, organizational sustainability trainings that go beyond finances. thinking beyond finances, basically talking to the leadership or to the entire NGO about how they as a team can jointly build their assets. It shouldn't be left to the executive director, neither should it be left to the finance manager, because finance managers, often only look at the balance sheet. They might be interested in assets, but they don't look at organizational sustainability the way an executive director of a program person probably would look at. So I think it's a very healthy conversation to be held by the program team, because once the program team, everyone in the organization sees the importance of their involvement in creating financial organizational sustainability, they will see that role differently, and will they start if they really see that and if they learn, they then also learn how to get involved differently, how to contribute. An M&E person now sees, oh, actually there's real value for my M&E data. M&E data is not only for the donor, the M&E data is absolutely fundamental for the fundraiser or the resource mobilization of the organization to be able to talk about track record. If the communications person is not able to come up with impactful stories from the communities, then my proposal will be flawed, because I can't talk about anything interesting, anything tangible, anything that could attract the attention of an outside donor or a local donor. So I think if everyone clearly sees their role and not, oh my God, now I have to do this. Oh my God, now I've asked to do this. I think if the team is really fully understanding what resource and mobilization entails, an organization is much better equipped to actually get resources on board, because philanthropic donors, particularly some of them, they're very clever. They're interconnected. They will always ask each other. They never ask other NGOs, always ask other donors. They only believe what other donors say. So I think it's very, very important to have this conversation with the entire team, and not only with the executive director, fundraiser, or the finance manager. So this is definitely something that I would do. That's my way of dealing with it.
Barbara, I have a question. If
yes.
Wangu, you don't have anything to add on it, I will ask a question. So following what Andre spoke about paying the bills, and imagine, it just made me realize that I'm part of an NGO in a voluntary capacity, as it may be, but I never recognized it as how I've seen volunteers outside of me. I might have heard of NGOs, but once you have that realization, we're talking about beyond fundraising and coming to new ways of donor money, rather than depending on donor money, but the person that you're giving grants away to. And I have a very rough relationship with receiving grants. I don't know how to really take that graciously right now. Even in our small circles, whatever we get, I start to take 2 steps away from that money, however it may be. So how is that part of receiving and realization that you are being supported by an NGO, you need aid, that comes into the picture, and how does that accentuate the conversation, and how is that going to be reconfigured in this conversation of going in a different way of creating funding?
So this is about seeing. I think I don't. If I understood your question properly, I think I mentioned it earlier. I think it's about when I think honest donors, or donors who, or philanthropists, or donors, or those who are really interested in their work, they want to see through. They want to see what you're all about as a person, as a management team, and they also want to see how much you have contributed, particularly for a startup, have contributed to setting up an organization, how much time has gone into it without receiving any money. And I think, I'm not saying everything should be free of charge, but they also see how much time as an executive director you spend of building relationship with the communities. How much time you spend in finding alternative way of resourcing. I think all of these efforts are being recorded as positive, that you want to be someone who wants to do things differently. That's my experience. And if they see this, that you don't want to be that typical donor-dependent NGO that's going to be dependent for the next 50 years, if they see this as a very positive sign of you going an extra mile of creating new innovative, ways of working, of experimenting here, or pivoting into a new way of working. And there's one thing. The other thing is, like, I think we need to now this sounds very capitalistic, but I still say it. We are still working in a capitalist world. We are not yet post-capitalism. We still need to insist that what people contribute, the time is money, and this time, this time of 50 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours, 500 hours should be monetized and should be accepted and appreciated as a contribution by everyone who is to a social cause. But we never have this conversation because we don't have the means to document these contributions, volunteer contributions. If ecoversities, or if all the contributions of who've organized this conference would be put together in a timesheet and we would put a number to it, I mean, I'm sure it would probably go into the 100, I don't know, I'm just giving 50,000, 100,000, maybe less. I'm not sure. I don't know how many people were involved, but I think it's an important conversation to have, and the value we create as a society. If we were in a post-capitalist society, we wouldn't have to. We probably would not need this conversation anymore. But unfortunately, we are not there yet. I'm not sure I've answered your question. That's a very complex one.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in really quickly. That's what we do, and it's actually 100 of. Sorry, I got lost in dollars, but it's a lot of money. And it's beautiful when we see, wow, we value so much. The question is, who's going to pay it? And then the answer usually is no one or somebody. Yet there's some institution that help us. But so bottom line, we go back to Monday. I have to work for the local mining company because no one is going to pay for the what we say this conference real value is.
I agree. I won't disagree. That's unfortunately reality, Andre. And I don't have a solution to it either, but I think that's all. It's with the responsibility is with us to question that, because we could also, if you ask if ecoversities were to apply for funding or not get money or try to attract funding for another conference next year or in a couple of months, you could actually say this is our track record and this is what it costed. I think
Hello.
we would make your point.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand. So it's just I wanted to say that often I've seen this case that when people want to help people and we don't have money, we look outside. And I don't know. I think we could also, with all the assets we have, with all the assets, yeah, it's also assets, I guess, with all that we have, like each of us, because we are like so powerful and we have so much assets, each and one of us, and so much things to share. And I just think that the fact of it being so hard to get together and organize ourselves in what do we really want, what do we really need, and then how to work for it, and then stick onto that. Because I remember Charlie Chaplin once in a film, The Grand Dictator, at the end, it has like a little talk, a little discourse, and it's a very nice speech where he invites the population of everyone to stop following people with big machines and just more start making their small machines themselves, because that's what's going to make them more independent. And I think I am a mechanical engineer, and well, like all of us, I'm many other things. But I have come to learn that it's so simple to make things and small machines that are very, very simple and work only with solar energy Only with heat we can make so much things. Oh, so for like 10 years I've been teaching people how to use solar energy. But I have found that the hardest thing in my work is to find people that are interested in learning and working. So people are just interested in money. People just want money and money and money. And not long ago, somebody just came back from India from a retreat, and she asked me, like we were in Morocco at a terrace and 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and she's like, "So, all your story about teaching people how to use solar energy and dehydrating stuff and everything, is it for you, for your ego, or does people really need this, you know?" And so I asked myself a lot this, and I think it's both. It's me wanting to share, but I don't want it to share because I love to travel and I love to meet people and I love to have fun with people making things, because I have always enjoyed making things and inventing things. And I also like to live well, and I think machines and simple things allow us to make a lot of things, even like a lighter. A lighter allows you to make fire with one finger. So like giving the value back to technology and looking back, like the other day somebody was talking about in the opening ceremony about how like we don't look back so much because we have the tendency that walking back it's bad. So I think we also it's good to sit down and look back and see how all that we have forgotten, like for example the steam engine. It's things that are so powerful if you add it up to modern solar heating, parabolic, very, very simple reflective systems that are passive and have so many little pieces and work so good. And we can make so many motors without electricity in so many places in the world that make water pumps and things that are very easy to understand and easy to build. But like this, there's many examples that things we could do together. And I think for me, this is the challenge that we have, because like Andrea was saying, I love to be here because you're listening to me and I am listening to you, and we're so open to try to make this better. And this is what is so rich here. And well, thank you for listening. That was it. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah. Okay. I don't, Alex, do you want a comment? But I totally agree with you. My last comment maybe is I agree with you. People often, there's lots of money-minded people, but there's also very many people who are not totally, not only money-minded or focused on money. But in order for them to, they also need to make a living. I still believe all the volunteers of this world, including the many people that are in this room, resources need to be mobilized, because people need to live of something. And I think it's absolutely important. For me, community wealth building is the future to go, and is for me the natural progression away from where we currently are. We need to start building community wealth that we can actually live together sustainably well as a community. And this also goes for volunteers everywhere, that their energy cannot be sustained if assets are not being mobilized, whatever assets these are.